In 1985, Super Mario Bros. Released for the NES, and it was not just a hit, but one of the defining hits of the platforming genre for the rest of time, and the killer app for its console. It had excellent artwork, a catchy soundtrack which remains relevant to this day, and it should go without saying that it was pretty fun. But here's the kicker. It was also pretty hard. Early console games all tended to be pretty hard for a few reasons. On the one hand, it's a carryover from arcade game design, where a difficult game did a better job of separating gamers from their quarters. But another, equally important reason, was because they weren't actually all that big. NES cartridges could hold about as much space as it took my computer to store this picture, and making the most of that space was the eternal task of all 20th century computer programmers. One of the ways of making that space go to distance is by making your game hard. Force your players to lose so they have to do it again and again, increasing game time and ultimately the player's satisfaction when they eventually cleared that final boss. And by the way, that insight doesn't actually belong to me. The first time that I'm aware of that someone talked about this on YouTube was early YouTube video game analyst Egoraptor in his short but nonetheless deeply influential series Sequelitis. He also made some animations in the 2010s before never doing anything notable ever again. Gee golly willikers, I wonder what happened to that guy. Anyway, Super Mario Bros. Was no stranger to difficulty, and with each subsequent attempt, no matter how far you made it, how close to victory you were, you always gotta go back to World 1-1 and 1-2 before you're allowed to warp back to wherever you want to go. Always playing these basic levels, these uninteresting Goombas, these jumps. God, can I just get to the good stuff already? If you ever felt that feeling in a side-scrolling platformer, congratulations! You understand why Sonic the Hedgehog exists, as this exact feeling is what Sonic was created to overcome, as stated by his original programmer, Yuji Naka. If you're always going to go back to that first level, the people who would eventually become Sonic Team thought to themselves, if we're going to play this thing over and over, again and again, let's make it cool. Let's make it exciting. Let's make it fast. So Silksong, right? Good game, kind of contentious game. It's got lots of hostile design built into it, which means no matter who you are, if you played Silksong and made it past, say, its first act in totality, you probably have a strong opinion on it. I know I do. So I decided to write a video about that, talking about Silksong's difficulty, its story and gameplay ambitions, all that jazz. But I am not the first to make a video about Silksong, or the 50th, so I scrapped my more generic review of Silksong for something more focused on what I'm saying that you've probably not heard before. Hi, I'm Super Dude. Welcome to a video about Silksong Hot Takes Only Edition. So as I already said, there are many videos talking about how amazing Silksong is, or perhaps the exact opposite, being bloated, frustrating, annoying. But almost every video is in some way commenting on the game's combat difficulty, rehashing similar conversations we're always having on the subject of video game difficulty and accessibility. Should a game have multiple difficulty settings, or should a game have a menu of modifiers that make the game easier or harder, perhaps with one of those "this is how the game is meant to be played" descriptors for folks who want to play the game in the developer intended way? And what of the developer's intent in all of this? What if the developer wanted their game to be really hard and see the players who can't clear the difficulty spikes as an unfortunate but necessary sacrifice for their gameplay experience? Damn all consequences. GTFO is one of my favorite cooperative PvE shooters, but if you gave that game difficulty mods that made the game easier, then the point of playing GTFO, its tension, its stealth mechanics, those are kind of lost. And the community recently made this website that actually added difficulty modifiers, but they all make the game harder. Shout out to GTFO and its community. Y'all are freaks and I love you for it. Not every game is for everybody, and it obviously sucks when you love a game so much, and yet still don't have the mechanical execution to see it to the end. And this is all assuming able-bodiedness. If you suffer from some physical disability that makes it hard or impossible to use a controller or keyboard, that makes this debate less philosophical and more a matter of whether you can or can't play a game at all, which is an absolute minefield all of its own. As I've already stated, this is an extensively debated topic with no clear answer, and I don't wish to waste any more breath on the subject that your mind is already made up on, though my opinion is on screen if you want to pause and read. The one thing I do want to comment on, or the one thing I'm allowing myself to make a video about, is this. For all the chatter around the combat, there are loads of takes on both sides of that fence, but there's only one solid opinion I've heard repeated over and over for this other contentious part of Silksong's design. The boss runbacks suck! And with all due respect, I disagree completely. If we were to make each enemy in the game have 3/4 the health they have right now, and only their Devastators deal 2 damage as opposed to, nearly every attack and every enemy in the game, does that fundamentally ruin the combat experience? Certainly makes it easier, but I don't think it would change the flow of combat too much. But if this game allowed you to respawn outside the boss or horde room every time you lost, similar to how Elden Ring's Stakes of Marika mechanic works, let's call it Silk Stakes of Silk? I don't know. I think Silksong would lose something fundamental to its essence as a Metroidvania and a game. That's what this video is about. But first, what does that word that I just said mean? Silksong is a Metroidvania, a subgenre of action-adventure game that tends to be more platforming-based with non-linear exploration. I must stress the non-linear part. You'll hit an area you can't enter, and then sometime later you'll get an item, ability, or in some of the neater Metroidvanias, new understanding of how the mechanics function, which I've called knowledge base unlocks in the past, though others call this Metroidvanias, a term I personally hate because Metroidvania is a term that's already pretty hard to parse if you don't know the history of the genre, so taking Metroidvania and stuffing brain into the middle there is adding even further obfuscation to a term, making it so new players are just going, huh? What? What? Huh? When they're hearing this new term. Genres are supposed to be easily parsable and communicate quickly to the potential buyer, player, whatever you call them, what sort of experience they're about to get into. And that's fundamentally harder for games since game genres are trying to describe mechanics, not story or art aesthetics. When you're watching an action film, you know that things are going to blow up, there's probably going to be guns, there's going to be fighting, something like that. It's telling you what you're going to see. Whereas Bloodborne and Another Crab's Treasure are inside of the same genre of game. And it should be visually obvious how different these games are, and they're probably trying to cater to different types of people, despite being the same genre. This makes labeling any game with a neat and tidy genre a hard task, I know that. But all I'm saying is, video games are kind of insular. Watch Rasputin's series where he introduces his wife to various games across genres, years, and platforms, and it becomes very clear how ingrained the rules of video games are and what you can do in them. And if we want to bring more people to this medium, they need to be able to understand what the fuck we're saying, and Metroidvania is just a mess of a genre term in that regard. I know it makes sense to all of us here, but it's alien to outsiders, and ideally we would like to share our hobby with the world, right? Which means we need to put in the effort to be understood. Soulsborne is also on my shit list. I'm a genre tag hater, and I've just never brought it up. This is who I am. What was he saying? Oh, right. Can't move forward, lock door, find a key, go back to lock door and unlock it. But the key is rarely found near the lock, so non-linear exploration. The Hollow Knight subgenre of Metroidvanias also puts a strong emphasis on mechanical execution. The platforming is great, and the combat is fluid and expressive, and the bosses and stages near the endgame get quite hard to really test your skills in both departments. Speaking of tests, what are the different types of challenges Team Cherry asks you to overcome when playing Silksong or Hollow Knight? You can think of these as the quizzes, midterms, and final exams on your way to graduating from the college that is Silksong. As I've already clearly established, there are 3: combat, platforming, and navigation itself, which can also be rephrased as, where the fuck do I go? Navigation is a weird one, given that we're playing a Metroidvania, a genre known for its backtracking, secret paths, intricate maps, and I must stress, the backtracking means this one's always being tested. Consider this the Metroidvania special. No matter what you're doing, you're always being tasked with remembering where you are, where you've been, and where you want to be going. The background radiation of the genre itself is orienting yourself in space effectively. To keep up with the school metaphor, this is your attendance grade. The other 2 disciplines are also always being tested. Combat and platforming are how you interface with the world after all, but sometimes the game signals rather clearly if you're in a combat challenge or a platforming one. When you enter a gank zone or a boss area, that's a combat challenge. You no go past here if you can't take these punks in a fight. And if you fail, that sucks, mate. You gotta walk back from the last bench. Platforming challenges tend to be smaller in size and scale, sometimes entire regions of the map are platforming areas, like the White Palace from Hollow Knight, but those won't come up until deep into your playthrough. No, for Silksong, most platforming challenges are like this. A little test of your pogo efficiency, perhaps a sprinting section, then you're off to wherever you're going. It's rare that the game really pushes you through a gauntlet of dedicated platforming, which is a bit unfortunate because platforming is easily my favorite part of this game. Hornet is a dream to control with all of her movement tech unlocked. That sprint, the long and high jump with this little zippy thing. You ever see her do that in Hollow Knight and think, oh, I want to do that? That looks like it rules. Well, it does, dude. And learning to use this move in a fight is even more rewarding. So it's just unfortunate that there aren't more platforming challenges in Silksong, because it feels so good to move in this game. Or maybe we're thinking about this the wrong way. Remember what I said earlier about those combat challenges? If you fail them, you're sent back to your last bench, and you gotta make your way back to try again and reclaim your rosaries. This, kings, queens, and in-betweens, is exactly why those platforming challenges are typically so short. Clearing this jump is a platforming test that is a prerequisite to reaching that fight, which is the combat test. And obviously that includes some platforming, I know that, but roll with me. And you must succeed at both of these things to progress. Elsewise, you gotta do that platforming challenge again. This is how Silksong pushes you back into that movement system that it's so proud of, and it's the reason why I think these runbacks are so essential. Consider the final runback to Act 1, for example. Wall kicks, timed dashes, pogos off objects and enemies. This feels good to do. So no matter how many times I got my head bashed in against the final door of Act 2, I wasn't mad. How could I be with movement like this? Now, I know that previous runback is not the most egregious in the game, but I'm pretty sure everyone agrees that this one is the Bile Water runback. And yes, I am about to defend its existence. Starting from the very bottom of Biowater, which I must note is a poison swamp area, so it already sucks to be here at all, but I digress. From nearly the bottom, work your way up and around to the village that serves as your final boss, which is just a brutal trek. There's pretty complicated platforming, enemies that are both platforming obstacles and genuine threats, traps, and again, I will remind you of the maggot-infested swamp water. It is an absolutely grueling runback, and I won't lie, it pissed me off more than once in my boss attempts. But let me let you in on a couple of secrets. The land of Farloom is huge, easily dwarfing the original game's Hollow Nest in terms of map size, which means whatever you're stuck on right now is rarely your only option for progression. Team Cherry's games have often been compared to From Software's thanks to that shared interest in uncompromising difficulty, and though the original Hollow Knight didn't take any intentional inspiration from the Souls games, there are some easy parallels to be made between Silksong, Hollow Knight, and some of the later From titles. Nakey Jakey's Silksong video makes a direct comparison between Silksong and Elden Ring, which I think is useful for considering how best to deal with this game's challenges. Both games are structurally similar after all, huge maps with hard challenges pepper both worlds. But whatever challenge lies before you is rarely your only avenue of progression. At any point in Elden Ring, if you find yourself beating your head into an absolute wall of a boss encounter, remember the open world. Simply go somewhere else. Return with new items, abilities, or weapons to improve your chances, and you'll find yourself less frustrated overall. And the same holds true for Silksong. For the Biowater runback, there is a charm that greatly mitigates the threat the waters pose, which makes the trek much more manageable. But of course, that means you're using a trinket slot purely for navigation, rather than the fight ahead. Defense versus offense, the universal question. But there's actually another way to mitigate this runback as well, and that's by simply making it shorter. If you're careful, being mindful of potential false walls and corridors, you may find a secret bench which drastically reduces the headache, turning the most bullshit boss encounter in the game into something far more manageable. Which is to say that, for all of the complaining about this area of the game, that should have been the signal that something was off about this runback. People complained that this was too long a distance, but what they should have felt was that this was abnormally long a distance, and it could be reduced if they paid attention to their surroundings, a test of their sense of navigation. Your attendance grade, if you recall. But this is, unfortunately, all speculation on my part. I was spoiled on this particular runback by a rogue meme in a subreddit that wasn't even Silksong related before seeing the area naturally, so I just accepted the length as is. Though again, I really did enjoy this platforming section. I wish there were more like it. That's actually the true villain of the story, I think. Word of mouth said that Biowater was bullshit. So everybody entered the section going, oh yeah, this is the bullshit challenge, and accepted it on those terms without looking deeper into the area, exploring it for itself and discovering that, I mean, yes, it is kind of bullshit, but pay attention, and it will make itself easier for you, either by exploring the greater world or by using your sense of navigation. And maybe even with all that said, you still think it's bullshit. But it's a step too far to remove the boss runbacks entirely. If you were to remove them, sure, a lot of the wrinkles in Silksong are ironed out, but it also greatly removes the lion's share of the platforming the game asks of you. So you could do this jump once. That's great, that's neat, but that could have just been a lucky shot. As punishment for failing that boss, prove you can do it again. Do it again. and again, and each time you feel yourself quickening, your route is optimized, your flow is fluid. It is only because of this repetition that you are allowed the space to explore this particular zone and make it faster, faster, faster. You're turning this run back into a speed run where you can actually play with the movement mechanics for a moment. If there were no runbacks, platforming would be reduced to moving from destination to destination, those platforming biomes in the late game, and I guess those delivery missions, which are like the delicate flower, but a bit more forgiving, except when it's not. It does get to be pretty mean on occasion. The sausage definitely didn't make me mad. It is true that not all runbacks, even in Silksong, are created equal. Sometimes it's just straight up walking across the corridor. Sometimes there are too many obstacles to allow for sprinting, so you just gotta... Okay, thank God. It's a big game, and not every area is gonna be a winner. But like the game as a whole, there are some truly exceptional highs that make up for those frustrating lows. But that's my opinion. For some, the highs do not outweigh the lows, which makes sense. If there's anything I've learned from watching Silksong essays, and YouTube reviews in general honestly, it's that everyone takes away something a little different. Nikki Jakey played Silksong and walked out with an existential crisis. Jacob Geller played the same game and found a way to explore his thoughts and ponderings about the Abrahamic God and what Team Cherry has to say on the subject, which is very him. And even in the videos that are just standard reviews, commenting on the difficulty and taking a stand on either side, you're seeing who they are. Their sense of humor, their ability to stomach difficulty, stress, bullshit, whatever you want to call it, and what their touchstones are as creators, because Silksong is reflected in each mirror a little differently. Silksong's pretty raw. It has a lot it's saying, mechanically and narratively, and it doesn't care a lick if you don't like what it's doing. Team Cherry already made a masterpiece game that secured their legacy. Their next game might as well be a little weird. They're the Daniel Radcliffe or Robert Pattinson of game studios. They don't need money anymore. They're just here to make some stuff. And that means they're making something with uncompromising vision, with opinions and ideas about its world and ours. Unlike the little guy from Hollow Knight, Hornet is a character with opinions, and she wants to make right the suffering she's witnessed, and to somewhat make amends for what she couldn't do in the original game. I am dancing around a conversation of Silksong's story saying that right now, which I think has, unfortunately, had tragically little in the way of thoughtful analysis, what with all this difficulty discourse, but it's not on topic for this video, so I elected to cut it. But if you are interested in seeing something like that, let me know, or go over to Patreon, where I'm sure I'll drop the original version of this script for those who are curious. And for other story analysis, you should probably watch Mossbag. He does more VatiVidya style lore interpretation, but interpretation is analysis in a manner of speaking. So Mossbag stuff is good, and he's funny. He's great. If you're a fan of Hollow Knight or Silksong and you haven't seen his videos, you've done yourself a disservice. Go watch those now. Or wait, maybe wait till this video's done. Actually, I shouldn't tell you to watch it right now. But with all of my talk of opinions and mirrors, it begs the question of what I took away from Silksong. This game clearly elicits strong opinions in the YouTube video game essayist niche, so what did it make me feel? Well, at first, I will admit it was frustrating, but once the game gets its feet under it, I was hooked. More than hooked. I fully 100% completed Silksong. And then I turned the game on the very next day, and I beat it again, this time as a speedrun, and it just felt so good. Planning my route, gaining those abilities, sprinting, moving, running, jumping. It's special to literally do everything in a game that you can, or at least everything it tells you is notable, and not feeling like you've done enough. There is more fun to be had here, and say what you will about the combat, but I think the platforming is very slept on by comparison. So I started writing my original version of this script, and for footage reasons, I started playing the original Hollow Knight for what is probably the 10th or 15th time in my life, and I'm so sorry to say this, Hollow Knight, I was kinda bored. Going through the motions, I felt this maddening itch, like something inside of me was grabbing my spine and tugging on my brain, this terrible need to move quicker. I've done this before. I played Hollow Knight so many times. I want to sprint. I want to move faster. I was in the first couple of worlds and I could feel my blood boiling for something more, and I realized that Silksong broke me. With its more demanding platforming and combat, its speed, its customizability, it just felt more interesting to me. And now that there's something better for me out there, I can't go back. Like Yuji Naka playing World 1-1 of Mario for the umpteenth time and craving something faster, I have experienced the wind through Hornet's cloak, and it is a drug in my veins. I was obsessed with Sonic as a child, as I'm sure you could guess from my autism, and this game is returning me to those challenging, quick platforming routes. I love the speed. I love the tricks. Who cares if I die and die again? Just let me climb, damn it. It feels so good to move in this game. The next Sonic game should be a Metroidvania. Do it, Sega. You guys like doing weird shit. Make a 2D Sonic Metroidvania and my wallet is yours. So all of y'all out there having any difficulty conversations, I hope that's enriching for you. Because for me, Silksong is just the right flavor of complex platforming. Not so tough that it feels like a Kaizo game, but meaningfully challenging and a breeze to play. If you meet this game on the platforming level, I think what's here is truly special. And sorry not sorry, but that isn't possible without the boss runbacks. Sonic's gameplay shines thanks to repetition. You can only get this good at embodying the blue blur if you put the time in, if you play the levels again and again. And for Silksong, death acts as a second chance to make that runback look and feel dope. Hopefully y'all see what I mean by this. And if anything, if the game is pissing you off, try to relax and think like I do. Each death is an opportunity to fly once again. Except for the dream sequences. Oh my god, Hornet, wake up! Go faster! Thanks for making it to the end. This video would have been out faster, but depression came at me with a steel chair and killed me dead. So, if you want to support me further, you could subscribe, like, comment, all that jazz. Or, really, you can always go to Patreon or Ko-Fi, is it pronounced that way? If you want to support me monetarily. Doing so allows me to, well, spend more time being depressed, I guess. Sorry about that. Writing is the easy part. I like writing. Footage collection is also pretty fun and easy to do. It's the editing. Editing is just, it's always hard for me to stay motivated to edit. But, you know, I have other scripts along the way, so hopefully the next couple of videos will be quicker. The next one should be sloppy, let's say. Friend sloppy, even. So look forward to that. But in the meantime, thank you for watching. I love you. See you later. Bye. Hopefully faster than this time.